This is day 5 of the September 88 7-day retreat. Quite a number of things have come up with people, and several of those with several people. The whole question of effort. Doesn't it take effort? Maybe willpower, some put it, to do this work. So we will talk about effort. What always comes up again is, I'm confused. What is confusion? We'll maybe have some time to look at what it is we call confusion, or I'm confused. What we mean by that, and what often the consequences are of telling oneself that one is confused. One person asked, what you call the wholeness of perception, is that just sensory perception? The activity of the senses? This comes up. I always get to a point where I can't go beyond. Maybe we'll get to that too. Today or tomorrow, there's still other talks left. Then the question, why do we sit at all? Comes up. Day 4, 5, 6, 3. Why am I here? Why am I sitting? What am I doing this for? But before we get to any of these, we may not get to all of them. It's a nice thing when you never know ahead of time. So the mind is free to look and expand, go into things that one hasn't thought about before. They present themselves in all of us. Before we get to these questions, we'll start with what somebody said this morning about taking a walk. Yesterday on this lovely day. I don't think anybody here didn't take a walk. We all took walks. The warm sunshine and the cool air, and the glistening trees, all the dust washed off, and this heavy rains. The sparklingness of everything, the clarity of the hills, the distant hills, so close, so clear. And this person said it wasn't, we'll go to that later. Just the walking of it, the joy of that. And then suddenly the thought arose about the state of the world. How we live everywhere. In conflict, in misery, in conflagration. Despoiling this beautiful earth of ours. And he said, feeling or whatever, a thought aroused immediately. He didn't name it. We have all kinds of words for it. Sorrow, feeling of sorrow. And wondered if we could talk about that, look at that together. The state of the world, he said, the way things are, what we've just listed partially. These are facts, these are not imaginations or illusions, even though it was a thought that brought to mind these facts about the way we live on this earth together. Or rather, not together. These are facts, and they cannot be denied. He was saying one could just say, well, just take a walk, and implying just forget about that. But the thought comes up, and the facts are there, and they cannot be denied. Maybe they can be denied, but they are not to be denied. Because we are part of this. This human consciousness, the I consciousness that we have given some time to look at and explore, which is divisive, conflicting, consisting of images with which one identifies. This consciousness is universal. And in its conflicts and conflagrations, it creates this world. The reality of war or terrorism is a manifestation of the human conflict, consciousness in conflict, in misery, or in anger, violence. The outer violence which is observed is a manifestation of inner violence. I don't think that can be denied, and need not be denied. It can be looked at, even though one may not want to look at it. And yet it need not be wallowed in. So we were looking together, how does one respond to this thought and this feeling in the gut or solar plexus, wherever it manifests, it's really throughout this organism of sorrow or deep concern or sadness, feeling the tragedy of it all on such a beautiful, brilliant, peaceful and quiet day. And we were questioning, is there guilt involved in this feeling that hits one? So one has to look. And one may discover that feeling guilty brings in personal feelings about it. I should be doing something about it. I shouldn't have the the privilege or the good fortune to be in this beautiful countryside walking quietly. I should be suffering. All of this is what guilt is made of. And it is a step away from the facts. One can create oneself a tent of guilt and live in that tent and spawn. Sometimes these tents in the trees where 1,000 new caterpillars are spawned. It's not the openness of acknowledging and seeing. It's withdrawing into a personal realm of good feelings and bad feelings and fear. Lots of thoughts. The other thought that comes up so quickly is, I ought to do something about this state of the world. And very often that feeling comes up because one cannot bear the guilt of being here. Here meaning a place in which there is affluence, food, relative peace in the house. Feels one has to do something to feel less guilty. It's often not just purely so. Sometimes there's really the urge to go someplace and do something. Help wipe some wounds or build up maybe some dwellings out of the rubble of bombings, over bombings, over bombings. Then we were wondering whether one's feelings and thoughts in response to this thought of the state of the world, the fact of the state of the world, whether all of one's reactions to it, the guilt or the feeling I ought to do something, or the denial of it, or the wallowing in it, whether they aren't all part of this whole stream of consciousness which also creates this state of the world of conflict. And is it possible to be free of that state, that stream of consciousness that creates war, different identities, and the struggle, the everlasting struggle between different identities? I recently saw a short, in-depth news presentation of the state of Northern Ireland, and just looking at what's going on, the violence, and hearing all these different leaders speak, and the people who cry. It seems so utterly hopeless, because no one was listening to anyone else. Everyone was full of their right view of it and how hopeless it is because the others won't listen. And on our small scale relationships, don't we get into the same things? Our strong opinionation and the attachment to our opinions and views, and the inability to listen, to drop those and openly listen. To not say, yeah, the others must be right, but just to listen. No one may be right. So the question we were asking was, is it possible to step out of this stream of consciousness which creates in ourselves and in each other and in this whole world this utter chaos and violence and inability to work together intelligently on the problems that do exist, problems of famine or flood, it seems that time after time again one hears about a country and it is said, this country used to be the breadbasket of the area. And that's east or west, north or south. It is not confined to any particular ideology that rules in that country. But to ideology ruling, that is a factor, but not which. And now it is impoverished. People are hungry. So, the soil is there, the know-how is there, the scientific, the technology is all available to make a breadbasket out of this whole earth, enough to feed everyone, and then some more. But we can't get together. We can't talk intelligently with each other as human beings because we're also Americans and Russians and Angolans and South Africans and Protestants and Catholics and Muslims and Jews and Palestinians and Arabs. And for oneself, is one holding on to identities of what one is, or wishes so much to establish one in the near future that I can finally say to my friends what I am, or to my parents? It need not be conflicting, but it becomes confining. As soon as there is attachment to one's identity, the field is very narrow in which one lives and thinks. And we've talked about it a lot during this retreat, the great vulnerability to being heard, by being slighted or someone doing better, or by our whole competitive drive to better ourselves, which is always, or most of the time, at the expense of others. So the question again, can it be allowed to hover there in the mind and surface every once in a while? Is it possible to step out of this stream of divisive consciousness, me consciousness? And then of course the question comes up, but what do we mean by stepping out? We were actually quoting Krishnamurti, who always talks about that. Can one step out of the stream? This is, particularly during the recent years, been one of his most driving questions. Can a human being step out of the stream without becoming a monk or going into the caves or into the wilderness? Because then this is no guarantee at all when we be in that same stream, only in a different location. So, what does it mean to step out of that? Is this even any sense in talking about it, or wondering about it? Or if we don't wonder about it, then we will remain in it forever. So to me it makes eminent sense to think about it, talk about it, wonder about it. And look, with that question hovering there, look at how we live. Be aware of how we think, how we identify, how we attach to our opinions, how we don't listen to each other, how we build shells of armor around ourselves and therefore become isolated from each other. Can all of that come into an awareness which is not out to judge or do something or better things or step out of the stream, but just awareness without a motive or a goal, just wondering what this stream is all about as it manifests in this human being. It's the same stream manifests in human beings. And here it can be observed, seen. And what is the quality of the observation, or of the awareness, of the seeing, listening? What is the quality of it? It's so crucial, because when it is entirely free of judgment, or this immediate response, I have to do something. That response, I have to do something, is the I, which is part of that stream, the main stream of the stream. But that awareness has no I. It is not focused on me and mine, me and the others. It's not focused. It takes in the whole thing as it manifests here. That awareness that is not focused in the me and mine and the others. It has no division in it, because it's open and unidentified. That awareness is not of the stream. Even though it can shed light on the stream and make it so clear how utterly important it is to be aware, so that we don't constantly pollute the stream, contribute to it, just through inattention. So somebody asked the other day, where does this passion come from to do this work? It comes precisely from seeing what we're doing to ourselves and each other on the small scale and on the global scale. It's the same doings, the same thoughts and thought processes that are involved. And in observing that carefully, painfully, painstakingly, without denying or accepting or rejecting or clinging, that's not of that stream. Someone may want to pack up their bags, leave and go to a country in Africa and help with the indigenous problems. But what is the state of mind of the helper? Or someone may travel to march, to join a peace march, But what is the state of the mind of the marcher? So many people who have been involved in things like this have told me that the underlying motive was anger. And an outlet for that anger. And anger does not change the world. Anger just piles up on top of anger. So, as one packs up one's bags, if one indeed does, most of the time we don't, we just talk about it, or think about it, and then forget about the whole thing because it's too upsetting. In seeing the facts of how we live, is there love in the heart? Which can only be in the heart if this heart isn't washed over by all of our self-centered concerns and drives and needs. When those are quiet or in the background, we talked yesterday about it, one has to take care of oneself properly and be able to take this walk. But is there love in the heart? If there isn't, all of our marching and doings amount to very little or nothing. Not the idea I must love my neighbor, but love. Not I must. No I, just love, which is there when the I is quiet. Maybe in this connection, I'll take up something somebody said, even though I didn't mention that particular one at the beginning. I don't think I wrote it down. Somebody says, attention may be there, but it's so fleeting. And then there's all the stuff again. And then maybe a fleeting moment of attention, and then they landslide of stuff again, thoughts and emotions. I don't know about this. Is this for me? You see, it's marvelous that there is even a fleeting moment of attention. But we get stuck with talking to ourselves about all of those moments that it's not there. And talking ourselves into discouragement, maybe also in order to get out of this whole thing. Because it reveals too much that's painful and destructive of one's self-images, to which we are attached, which we prize and treasure and protect. But if one is really serious about this whole thing, then it doesn't matter how fleeting the moment is. This is one's whole life. One will give one's whole life to this. It's not a casual, fleeting interest, here today and gone tomorrow. If one keeps looking and seeing the utter need for waking up and living together lovingly, not just self-centeredly and therefore in conflict with ourselves and each other. Maybe with that, the fleeting moments aren't so fleeting anymore, because the question is there all the time. What's going on right now? What did I really talk about when I so easily put out some words? What did I really mean? Or what, asking the person with whom one is talking, what do you really mean by that? Let's look at it together. And going into depth rather than constantly skimming the surface of life. The more we're interested, the more we pay attention. And the more we pay attention, the more we see what's going on. And what is seen loses its power of mechanical control over the mind. The awareness is more sustained. It's there more often, longer, without any effort put into it other than the interest. The wondering. And the communicating with each other. If one has someone who's also interested, and one can look together in depth, not just one's usual surface conversational style, which is nice, but doesn't go into depth. We don't touch each other deeply, or don't touch together something that's the depth of all of us. So maybe the question, why do we sit, has been partly answered. And the whole question of effort, don't I have to make an effort even to come here? One may have made an effort to come here. Whatever was in the past, it's a fact that happened, but right now, can the effort to sit come under inspection? They come under a huge magnifying glass. One looks at this effort, what it's all made up of, all the strands of ideas which go into our ancient past. You must make an effort. Nothing comes without effort. Some training centers, people are told to say to themselves all the time, I will and I can, and I must. Whereas these strands of conditioning, can they be aerated through attention, through hearing them? We talk to ourselves. We can listen to how we talk to ourselves. We're so used to it that often we don't hear what we say. We just sort of blindly follow these commands we give ourselves. Or feel a sinking feeling if we have successfully described ourselves as a loser again, or whatever we do to ourselves, and getting away from the facts and making what we can call punchlines about ourselves, punching ourselves with what we say about ourselves. And that's away from the factual situation. So, can effort, I must sit straight, I must sit long, I must not miss a period, can all of that be aerated? And it is happening. People are looking at it. And when the sitting gets to be too much of a strain, take a walk. And a lot of people who have been trained in sitting all the time report invariably the feeling of guilt at putting on the shoes and taking off when other people are taking off the shoes to come in. The guilt of, one person told me, guilt of watching these beautiful clouds while one should be down there in the sitting room. And then just dropping it all and watching the clouds. So we may have made an effort to sit down, but as we sit, can effort reveal itself? And as one person says, it sits in every pore of the body. This, I must do something. But it is audible. That's the beauty of it. When it can be heard. It can be felt. And if that attention that hears and feels it is not judgmental or immediately gives way to another headline about oneself, then these pores can empty of that stuff and therefore be receptive to what's really going on without effort, without strain. We can only hear and listen when there is not the strain of I must and I have to achieve and I have to get to a goal. Then we are tight sinews, like two railroad tracks. Not the relaxedness and openness of listening to the whole thing inside and out. That's no effort. There's energy in it, but not any directed, willpower directed or motive directed energy. It's just the energy of the trees and the clouds, the water. The water that goes up the trees, just to think about that. Water going out of the depth of the soil up into this huge oak tree, all the way up and all into these branches and leaves. But you look at the oak tree and it's just swaying. It doesn't groan with effort. Oh, sometimes when you walk through the forest, it sounds like a lot of groaning, doesn't it? In the wind, particularly the beeches, I think, rubbing against each other. Sometimes people wonder whether we have bears. It's the trees groaning, not really groaning. They're making this eerie sound. Then one can test the thought of fear and the feelings that come up with it and the images. And people are telling me, I'm not just suggesting, people telling me that they notice these things. And there is a joy in discovering something like this. A sound, an image, and immediately the body reacting, and then more images and so forth. One can see the whole process like a movie unrolling. Sometimes in retreats there are maybe 2, sometimes 3 talks on effort, but I don't think it's necessary. Because a lot of people have discovered things before we've even talked about it in this retreat. So why do I sit find out. One finds out for oneself. And takes no one else's commands. If the commands are programmed in the mind, then to discover them, so they don't run automatically and affect the behavior. Oh. Yeah. The question, I always get to some point and then I can't go beyond. What is implied in this? Implied in this is, isn't it, that there is a beyond. And can one look right now as we're looking at it together, talking about it, using words? This beyond that I want to get to is itself a thought. Is that right? I get to a point and I can't get beyond. Would I be thinking of a beyond if I hadn't heard about a beyond? So what I've heard about a beyond, and that has many names, we don't have to list them now, that comes up in the mind time and time again, and I want to get that. That summum bonum, the best of all states, because that could solve all of my problems. It does sound funny, doesn't it? So what's the stuckness? What is the feeling stuck or against the wall, sometimes people describe? What is it? What is it? What is that feeling made up of? For one thing, it has a tremendous drive of wanting to get beyond the wall, the wanting, beyond where I am. And that is the goal we just talked about, and the motive. I have to get through this. And the inability to get through it. Can one listen to that? The drive isn't just a word. I'm using a word here right now, but the whole body manifests this drive to want to get beyond the wall or the stuckness. So can one listen to that? Get off the goal, which one sees as just an idea. One doesn't know whether there is a beyond. So why should one believe in the beyond if one doesn't know for sure? If one hasn't found out for oneself whether there is or isn't, why should one take anybody's word for it that there is a beyond this state right now and just listen to the state? That's something that's very real. The driving and pushing or frustration that comes from it, or the telling oneself, I'm stuck. And the moment we say that, we respond to that statement with a feeling of discouragement. And that feeling of discouragement, what is that? Physically, mentally, can one listen to it without effort? It's there. So can wanting, stuckness, frustration and discouragement not just be words that one says to oneself, but be felt deeply without the word. Just listen to like the wind and the insects. With a mind that is not divisive. It doesn't say it shouldn't be this way. It just asks, what is this way? And then looks and listens. Quietly. One may find to one's amazement that the walls and the frustration and the wanting and the beyond have just given way to what's there. The quietness of nothing. Nothing particular. Nothing known. The senses wide awake and open, and not functioning separately, but as one whole. But empty of this feeling of wanting something. Empty. When the me doesn't want, then what is there? We will end here for today.